The Fantasy Points Prospect Guide is live on fantasypoints.com. It was written by yours truly, and I am the film expert of this show, Film vs. Analytics. I'm joined, as usual, by Scott Barrett, the CEO of fantasypoints.com and the analytics brain here. Scott and I developed our relationship doing these kind of film versus analytics calls. He would call me. We'd bounce some ideas around about prospects. This is going way back. But today, we're jumping into Troy Franklin, Oregon receiver, ADP 11 in the dynasty rookie drafts. We're going to be going day by day, new prospect every day. Let's dive right in. Flimsy intro there, but we got it done. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I said on our last episode, like, analytically, this is not a great class, which is the exact opposite you're going to hear from any film expert or NFL mock draft cognoscenti member. But this is a prospect I'm excited to talk about. This is a prospect I really like, so I'm eager to get into it. Hopefully you agree. We'll see.
Yeah, and that is Troy Franklin, Oregon wide receiver. I do like Troy Franklin. I think it's weird because I get accused of being a Franklin hater because I think I have him, wide receiver 6, 8, something like that, where a lot of guys have him very high. But I really like him. I do like his game. I think his game is translatable. I think it's pretty excellent. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say because I do like him. I'm hoping the analytics back up the film stuff though, because maybe some of the reasons you like him aren't some of the reasons I like him. But anyways, why don't you dive in, give us your analytical spiel here?
Yeah, so Troy Franklin, ADP consensus, wide receiver 6, the 110 in a super flex. Oh, I'm sorry, the 111 in a super flex rookie draft. You have him wide receiver 10, which makes me a
Okay.
little nervous. But to me, I don't know if this is a good thing, but he's this year's Marvin Mims, which
Okay.
just means he has an amazing analytics profile. Last year, I said Marvin Mims had the second best analytics profile in the class, which wasn't actually true. I think third best Puka and Jackson Smith and Jigba were better, but I don't know. I was just kind of sleeping on Puka. Didn't really give him as much time and energy as he deserved due to he's like a projected day 3 pick. So, but anyway, Troy Franklin is who we're talking about. He easily led Oregon in receiving yards as a sophomore, nearly twice as many receiving yards as the next closest receiver. And then Franklin's 2023 season was really one of the best in the entire class. All before his 21st birthday, he averaged a class best 3.19 yards per route run from the perimeter, from the outside. That's where he ran 85% of his routes. That narrowly edged out 2 seasons from Marvin Harrison Jr. as best in the class, yards per route run out wide. His 14 receiving touchdowns ranked behind only Brian Thomas Jr. in the Power 5. Really, he easily has one of the best age-adjusted profiles in this class, probably only behind Malik Neighbors and tight end Brock Bowers. He had one of the most diversified route trees in the class, very little fraudulent production. I was really struggling to come up with concerns because I did see your ranking of him, but I struggled to find it. You could say he benefited from highest end quarterback play in Bo Nix and lowest end target competition. I think that's true. I think that's a little concerning, but not a huge deal. His numbers were just that good. The big concern, the far more damning concern, is one we talked about previously with Xavier Worthy, and that's that Troy Franklin showed up at only 176 pounds at the combine, and then returned the third worst speed score in the class, third worst of 27 qualifiers. He also bombed the gauntlet drill, for whatever that matters. He showed up heavier at the pro day, and he blamed his poor combine performance and low weight on a battle with the flu. But of course you'll say that. But he did show up heavier. But still, this is a big concern because we brought this up with our last video. So my question to you is, did you see the low weight, the low BMI show up on tape? Was he getting bullied off of his routes? Was he getting pushed to the sideline? Was he struggling against press coverage? But analytically, yeah, it's just a great profile, an awesome profile. I like him more analytically than Brian Thomas, than Xavier Worthy. Probably not as much as the top three, but easily wide receiver four, just based on the analytics profile alone, with the caveat being how much should I penalize him for the low weight, low BMI.
Sure. So to answer your question, yeah, you do see some of the play strength issues, the size issues on tape, not to nearly the extent you do with Worthy though. Um, a lot of that has to do with the fact that I think Franklin is a really, really excellent route runner, like developed. He's a John Hanson separatist, where he can generate separation at will. He didn't run well at the combine. I think he underwhelmed with that 40. That's not what you see on tape, though. You see a guy who routinely dusts corners without a lot of effort, like elite top end speed. You see it in the open field too. When he's got the ball in his hands, he's running away from everybody. There's nobody catching up to him. I I typically don't buy into the agent speak. Oh, he had the flu, stomach bug. Oh, he pulled his hammy on the first run, didn't do anything else. Yeah, like I typically don't buy that. But when the combine has a big discrepancy to what you see on tape, I start to maybe become a believer where I'm like, yeah, you see ridiculous linear explosiveness on tape, like ridiculous, not Worthy level, but and then the thing that really stands out to me too is he's a very fluid mover despite being very explosive. So a lot of guys that are explosive, they're herky jerky, they don't look smooth. It looks very like labored and intense. He just kind of glides. He looks like a Sindarin elf, like Legolas from Lord of the Rings. Like he just kind of glides on the ground. Ironically, I used the same comp for a teammate of Franklin's last year in Christian Gonzalez, and but man, this dude just is so fluid for how explosive he is, and it shows up in that route running. Man, he gets in and out of breaks just really, really smooth. A little physicality at the top of the stem is not a big deal. He knows how to address it. Really physical corners though will give him trouble. He really wasn't pressed at all in college, so we don't have tape of him getting off press. I think he has the quickness to probably be okay there. I would worry about really physical corners though getting after him against press. I The thing that really stands out too is with that explosiveness, he has great body control and ball tracking. Something that you mentioned Xavier Worthy, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about him because this is Troy Franklin's episode, but he's got excellent body control compared to Xavier Worthy. So if you're looking for that archetype, that smaller potential math changer, I think Franklin is a better at that job than Xavier Worthy is right now. Worthy might be faster, but I think Franklin is more of the complete package. He's going to know how to uncover. He's going to know how to attack blind spots and then track the ball down the field. And then he gives you everything you need in the short and intermediate part of the field too, where he can run legit routes. He can beat tight man coverage. He can beat zone. My biggest concern is twofold. Our biggest concerns are twofold. The play strength, the size. It it only points to him maybe not being a wide receiver one in the NFL. Maybe he's a high end, uber efficient, great wide receiver two who can occasionally score fantasy points like a wide receiver one. But I don't think he's ever going to be that alpha go to or running the offense through this guy. In that, so to get a first round grade in my scoring system, you really have to profile as a guy who either completely changes what defenses do or be a guy that you can run the whole offense through. And he just doesn't. I don't think he's going to do either of those. So that's the biggest thing. Then the other thing is inconsistent hands. He had a lot of really just funky drops on tape. Or you're just like, why? I think, gosh, what do you have, like 9 drops last year, Scott? I mean, it was a lot. So, and they're frustrating drops too. They're not like, they're just basic. I mean, there's so many. I watched all of them several times just trying to get a feel for it. There's no real rhyme or reason. He just concentration kind of falls apart sometimes. He'll try to catch things off his body that are, things that are around the waist. He'll catch around his body. He unnecessarily will jump sometimes to catch the ball, which is just like, why are you doing that? So again, I think people overrate how impactful drops are and whether teams care about it. Look at Deontay Johnson. Guy drops, every other ball he's thrown, but he's still a very effective receiver. So I don't want to overrate that, but I think those two things combined are why I'm a little lower on him than consensus and just sticking with the second round grade.
Yeah, so I didn't bring up the drops issue because it's just not something that's really predictive
Yeah.
from college to the NFL level. It's like coaches don't really care about it unless you're like the worst drop dropper of all time, and then you also struggle to separate. But if you're a really good separator, that's really something NFL teams can learn to live with. Yeah, I was talking to Danny about that. He was like, "Yeah, I didn't really like Franklin that that much because uh, I don't know, just like his drops were really bad on tape." And I pulled it up and I'm like, well, I'm looking at his career drop rate or his drop rate last season. It wasn't that much worse than so and so or so and so. And he was like, yeah, no, it's just like when he was dropping like the easiest targets at the absolute worst time, which really
Yeah,
sticks.
the timing of the drops were bad. That's what I meant when I
Yeah.
said they were really bad and
Mhm.
confusing and frustrating. It's like in crucial moments, he often dropped the ball, which is kind of weird. It was just weird. No rhyme or reason for it. So
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it's just, I don't know, not really listing that as a big red flag, just because it's not all that predictive. And like the career numbers weren't really all that bad. Um, yeah, so I really like him. Great analytics profile. The analytics people are kind of all unanimous in their love of Troy Franklin. The dynasty community much higher on him than the film bros, than the NFL mock draft cognoscenti. You, like I said, have him wide receiver 10. I can go as high as wide receiver 4 analytically. Um, and I was talking to Trevor Sikema, works over at PFF, about him. And he had a good quote I just wanted to bring up. He was like, he's not as flashy as Adonai Mitchell or Brian Thomas, but he honestly might just be a better receiver. And I like that because, like, yeah, I could see definitely has the better analytics profile versus Keon Coleman, Mitchell, or Brian Thomas. Um, but it's also like, I mean, like, how many wide receivers could we say that about? Was was Michael Thomas flashy coming out of college? Was Devontae Adams all that flashy coming out of college? But maybe he's just a really good route runner, really good ball tracking, etc.
yeah.
Um, and at least like that's kind of what I'm hoping to be the case, because I do like him. So any second thoughts on your wide receiver 10 ranking?
Yeah, I'll take a second look at it. For me, it's like this. It honestly speaks to just how great this class is to me. Like I really like Troy Franklin, and he's my wide receiver 10. That's crazy, right? So if you look at last year's class, I think I had Mims 6th or 7th, and I do see similarities there, and so that doesn't surprise me. And in fact, I bet you their grade is similar. My actual overall score. So I just it just speaks to the class and the depth of the class that you could get. Potentially Troy Franklin as the 10th wide receiver off the board, and he could be really good for you. I have no issue, by the way, conceding that he's probably a more skilled player than Brian Thomas or for sure Keon Coleman, or Adonai Mitchell. He's definitely a more skilled player than all those guys. I think because of what I do is so NFL focused and not fantasy focused. I'm thinking strictly impact on team. Can we give this guy 160 targets? Can he hold up through that? And I don't think that's true. He doesn't profile as a true wide receiver 1 for me. But that
Right.
doesn't. Yeah,
That's something the projections could miss, specifically with wide receiver, which is just like, maybe my hit rate is going to beat out the NFL mock draft cognoscenti, but um, it's going to be over on a guy like Franklin, who's maybe his ceiling is capped, and
yeah,
under on the Keon Coleman, Adonai Mitchell, Brian Thomas trio, where it's like under on all three and maybe two bust out, but one turns out to be a superstar.
yeah,
I could see that. I could see that being the case.
yeah, for sure. I got a comp for you. I'll throw at you. And again, similar to Worthy, there wasn't one guy I was like, oh, this is for sure him. He's kind of got a unique. He's long. He's got this really long stride. That's what makes his speed so effective too. By the way, and I didn't get to this in the traits profile, but his long strides with his speed, he gets on top of DBs very quickly. Like they're surprised. They're like, oh shoot, he's right here. So like when you're playing a cushion on him, like he can eat that cushion insanely fast. Anyways, I see Jameson Williams in that regard. Williams is very similar, low BMI, but really long, fast, explosive guy. I think Franklin probably tracks the ball better down the field. I think JMO is a much better route runner in the short and intermediate part of the field. And I think Franklin's fine at that stuff. I just think JMO was excellent at that. JMO's start stop ability was ridiculous for how fast he was. But I also see shades of like Devontae Smith and Terry McLaurin and but Franklin doesn't have the catch point toughness that those guys have. Like Devontae Smith is ridiculous at the catch point. Terry McLaurin is ridiculous at the catch point. But as far as a route running goes, I see more of that, real crisp, fluid route running with that explosiveness to get out of breaks. A little bit of Jordan Addison too, and I know you're not going to like that because you're a Jordan Addison hater, but there's elements of Franklin's game there that I see in all of them. I just wouldn't, you can't go straight 1-to-1 with Devontae Smith because Devontae is so good at the catch point where I think that's where Franklin probably struggles the most. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I know you do style comps. The Jameson
Yeah.
Williams one makes me nervous. Guy never cleared 70 yards in 18 career NFL games, but uh, you're doing style comps. I know.
Yeah, and also I'm talking the prospect JMO. Like when he was coming out, like JMO tore his ACL, that basically screwed up his rookie season. Then the suspension screwed up his second season. I think the best is yet to come for JMO still. The tape is still pretty good on him. So, but yeah, coming out of college, I see similarities there. Yeah.
That's fair. Um, so where do we fit in from a fantasy perspective? Current Superflex 111, wide receiver 6. I'm good with that for sure. Could even take him a few spots higher, but uh, I guess it's going to depend on some of the players we're going to be talking about in future
Yeah.
episodes and how aligned we are with those players. Because
Sure.
Franklin, I think there's some agreement that, maybe doesn't have the best upside, but feels a little safer than some other names.
Yeah, as it stands today, like I'm taking him over Xavier Worthy. So even if I'm a spot higher, I'd still pull the trigger on Franklin first. Now there are receivers I like better than Franklin that we haven't talked about.
Mhm.
But draft capital could, really kind of influence you. Landing spot too. Not just draft capital, but landing spot. Like if Franklin lands in the right spot, sure. He might, come up my fantasy rankings, I guess, so to speak. So I'm more comfortable with him at his ADP than Worthy at his ADP, though. I will say that for sure. So